What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Make an Impact podcast with real stories, real people, and real impact. My name's Stephen Turnbull. I'm an entrepreneur, husband, and father on a mission to empower individuals to share their stories so they can make an impact on you. Nick Zielinski in the house today, owner of Zielinski's Asphalt. We had a great conversation about taking over the family business, what it was like growing up around the family business, and just casually starting a motocross track, which is a pretty great conversation. Make sure to check this episode out. Thanks for being here. On to Nick Zielinski. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Make an Impact podcast. I got a special guest today, Nick Zielinski in the house, owner of Zielinski Asphalt. How are you, sir?
Good. How about you?
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for
I'm excited for this because I was thinking about it, and we're going unscripted as usual. But we know each other, but we don't know each other. We're the 5 a.m. crew at the gym, so normally it's like half asleep, Mike, and we're like, hey, good morning, and then can't breathe afterwards.
Yeah.
But looking forward to learning about you. Why don't you start just telling us about yourself?
So I'm Nick Zielinski, second generation owner of Zielinski's Asphalt now. And I own High Voltage Hills, the motocross track in Branningham. Just grew up paving and riding dirt bikes, and I kind of just funneled everything into like a business recently.
So you grew up in Waterville?
Yes.
Yep.
I grew up in Waterville, graduated in 2012 from there. Then I went to Utica College for a year, played football there, and then I transferred to Morrisville for 3 years.
Gotcha. And so was it always the plan to get into the family business?
Actually, not really. When I was younger, I always wanted to be in the military, and type 1 diabetic. So when I went to apply, they denied me. And then I was like, all right, well, there goes that. So then I just decided to get into the business. My dad, I grew up paving and doing everything as a kid. And I knew that there was good money in it. And once I got the taste of money, I kind of just was like, yep, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life.
So talk to us just about growing up around like a family business household, right? I mean, like I had that experience with insurance, different type of business, but it's the same thing. If you grow up working, seeing your parents working for something, understanding the long hours, understanding that, I think it gives you a different appreciation when it's now you in the role doing it. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so just like a quick snip here, I grew up in it, obviously, and my dad was always at every football game, basketball game, and everything. And now that I've taken over and I'm doing everything, I take a little bit more appreciation to it because I'm like, man, I don't know how he made time to make every football game, every basketball game, take me dirt bike racing, considering like what you have going on. But so now I appreciate that a lot more now than I did when I was a kid. And I just grew up, every summer vacation and getting kicked out of school and stuff. I always went to work. That was just what I did. He just like instilled that work comes first kind of thing, and it's the only way you're gonna make it in life. So he just kind of groomed me into what I am now, and I appreciate everything that he did. Probably didn't appreciate it when I was a kid. You know how it is. It's like your parents try to tell you what's best for you, and you don't always listen.
Right.
But now, looking back on it at the age of 31, I'm glad he, forced me to go to work every day in the summer. I'd have friends over, sleepovers and stuff when you're a teenager, and every day he would wake me up, even if I had friends over, and drag me to work, and I would work all day, and then I'd come home and do it all over again. And it just, instilled a work ethic in me. And, don't get me wrong, I never was deprived of anything as a child. I always had dirt bikes and four-wheelers and all this fancy stuff, but he also instilled in me that without hard work, you're not gonna make it. So that was a really nice thing to grow up in that. And, he worked hard. He came from literally rock bottom pretty much. You know what I mean? He didn't have a lot when he was a kid, and now, he built the company to a certain point, and then I took over, and, we're just continuing to grow.
Talk to us about him building the company. So it's 30 years old, you said?
Yeah. He started the business in 94. He was working for a construction company in Syracuse. He started sealing driveways and stuff on the side, like on the weekends and at night. And it kind of started to roll a little bit more. And then finally he just jumped in and said, I'm gonna go on my own, and it just took off. You know what I mean? And he did very well through the late 90s and early 2000s, doing like a lot of residential paving, sealing, all that kind of stuff. I remember as a kid, vaguely, but I remember him always doing driveways, and then it kind of branched out like mid 2000s. He started to do a little bit more commercial work, and that's kind of where he fell in place, was residential, some commercial. And a big hit for him was when the Turning Stone Casino put the golf courses in. He did all the cart paths over there on all of the PGA courses.
Oh, wow.
So like when I was a kid, when I was 11, 12, 13 years old, I was on the PGA courses paving cart paths with him and his crew. So that was a super cool thing. So like now every time I drive by, I'm like, I remember paving those, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was cool. And he started to expand in like 2008, around there. And then some things kind of happened, and he just got to a point where he realized he didn't want to keep growing. So he kind of scaled back to that smaller commercial residential stuff. And then, I got through high school, and then during college, I worked for him. And then after college, I just dove in, and, I was full-time, obviously. And he taught me, how to bid work and how to organize guys, and, where to get supplies from and all this stuff. And I thought I was going to have a hard time, or I thought he was going to have a hard time venturing away from the business because, it's his baby, he grew it. And he used to do this thing when I was a child where he would book vacations, and then like right before the vacation, he wouldn't go. And he would like send my mom and my sister on vacation because he was too busy. It was always an excuse. And he was about to do that again. Him and my mother decided they were going to go on like a month-long RV trip and do all this stuff. And he's like, oh, I don't think I'm going to go. And I'm like, no, you're going. Like, you've done this our whole life. Like, just go. And they went. And when he came back, the place wasn't in flames. You know what I mean? And I handled my own, and we got work done, and everything went well. And ever since that day, man, he kind of just like, not completely two hands off the wheel, but he's just like, he's got it. And it's just, we've just grown since then.
So I'm going to ask you this question. I can imagine there's plenty of answers, but I want you to give me the first one that comes to mind. What's the biggest and best lesson your father's taught you?
I would say not every day is a good day, but not every day is a bad day. So, there's a lot of moving parts in our business. So never, like no day is a great day in reality. There's always something that probably went wrong, but there's no sense of dwelling on it. Just pick up the pieces and move on and go about that the next day. Because at the end of the year, it's not about what happened 6 months ago on a Friday afternoon. It's about what you did at the end of the year. So you can't cry over spilled milk type of thing. You know, like people always say it to me. They're like, I don't know how you handle it. And it's like, well, if I got mad about everything that went wrong, I would never be happy. So you just pick up the pieces and continue on. You know what I mean? There's stuff breaks every day. Plants break, workers smash equipment, all sorts of stuff. But you can't sit there and dwell on it. You just figure out, you're just a problem solver at that point. Okay, this is broke. Like, what are we going to do now? Yeah. And then that's just how you go about business, really.
Well, it sounds cliche, but it's like all perspective.
Yeah.
It is. It's all perspective. You mentioned something that I want to go back to about how you didn't realize it then, but now you look back at it and like, I don't know how he made all my games. I don't know how he was at the motocross races, all of those things. How do you think he did that? Now being in the shoes of running the company, looking back.
I really don't have a perfect answer for that. I don't know how he did it. I think he just prioritized, me and my sister and my mother to a certain point where like business, whatever didn't get done that day would get done tomorrow, type of thing. And, he always made it a point. It didn't matter what was going on. I didn't know a lot of things that were even going on in the business when I was a kid. It was just like, Dad, I want to go to the races this weekend. All right, well, get the trailer ready, get your bikes ready, and Saturday morning, we were on our way to the races. It didn't matter if he had the worst week of his life. He just made it happen. He's always been that kind of guy that's like, he's gonna like put his back against the wall. He's gonna make out all right type of situation. So I grateful for that, because I did a lot of cool stuff as a kid.
Right.
And he always made sure that he was there for it. And, he just did a really good job at, work came first to a certain point, and then he put family,
Yeah.
So
take us back to, okay, so you go to enlist and they say no thanks.
Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, plan B. And hey, Dad, I'm back to work. Take us back to the evolution of you taking over and what that's looked like for the company.
The funny part about going to enlist, this is a little side piece, but I never told anybody in my family that I wanted to do that until probably 5 years ago. Like I just, it was something that I wanted to do. And I went down there by myself and was like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it didn't work out. And I just kept it to myself. And then like 5 years ago, a couple drinks in, I just told my parents, I was like, yeah, like I wanted to be a Navy SEAL when I was a kid and it didn't work out. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I actually went down to the recruiter's office and they denied me. And then, I was just kept it to myself and was like, hey, it's not going to work out, and I always wanted to be a cop and then all that stuff. But long story short, it didn't work out and I ended up in the business. So,
what's that mean for you taking over the family business?
At first it was, you grow up and you see the things that like your dad bought and, everything, the luxuries of life. Right. So it was kind of like, oh, like I'll be able to afford to do this and do that and go on vacation and stuff. But then as I transitioned to being like the sole owner, well, he's 50%, but, I'm like the operating manager of the situation now. I just, it hits home a little bit different now. It's not more or less about the money. It's more or less about like, reputation, like driving around and, you hear all these people are like, oh man, I saw your trucks over here. I saw your trucks over there. And I saw this driveway that you paved or this parking lot and, it looks beautiful. It's like, now it's more like gratifying to me to hear like the good things that come out of it and not so much the money side.
Yeah.
Obviously money makes the world go round. Money makes business, you have to have money to continue in business, but it's not so much about that anymore. It's more about like the reputation and, just getting noticed for the things that you do and, donating to things. You're constantly getting people coming in looking for donations, donating to golf tournaments and charities and this and that. And it's just like, I like to give back, which is, not usual for most people, I would say.
Yeah. So you said a little bit that he got to a certain point in the business and then kind of scaled it back a little bit and, focused on family and all those things. And you finally got him to go on the RV trip. What has been things in your mind that you've wanted to change with the business or things that have come up since you've been kind of taking over?
I mean, at first when I took over, it wasn't like I didn't have any like significant changes that I wanted to make. He's obviously made it at that point 25 years without any real hiccups, right? There was a lot of things that did happen that I probably didn't know about, but didn't really have any big changes. I just knew that there's, father and son like working together is doesn't always work out. It actually doesn't work out most of the time. And there was, a lot of butting heads, but we at the end of the day, we're still father and son, and we always appreciated each other. And so when I took over, I wasn't really like looking to expand or, make any significant changes. And then I kind of just started to learn more business side of stuff, like utilizing money in different ways and things like that. And that's kind of what like took the business to another level. In the last 5 years, we've 3 times in size, if not 5 times,
Wow.
in revenue and in all aspects of business. It's, we went from 10 employees to I've got 40 now,
Wow.
and I've gone from 3 or 4 dump trucks to 8 or 9 and 7 tractor trailers, like all this stuff. And I wasn't doing it because I wanted to make big changes. It kind of just all kind of fell in place. Business has been good the last 5-6 years. And I just continue to grow and grow and grow and learn more things like podcasts like this, like I watch a lot of business podcasts and, just listening to other people that are successful and wealthy, just listening to how they operate. And that's kind of what grew the business. It wasn't like I was going to take over and, like I had this grand plan of, 5 years from now, this is where I want to be. It kind of just all happened. And now I'm just like riding the wave, Things have been great. Business is good. We're growing every single day. But other than that, I wouldn't say there was anything that like I wanted to change. It kind of just changed on its own. And I just rode with it.
So let's dive deeper into the business. So tell us exactly like what you guys do, who you can help, all that good stuff.
So we do a lot of obviously paving. We pave driveways, we pave parking lots, we do small municipality roadways. We do milling, which is, the grinding of the asphalt to take the old asphalt out. I just bought one of those a few years ago to do myself. I do trucking, a lot of trucking, aggregate trucking, blacktop trucking. We haul salt all winter long for the state. We do a lot of concrete now. I just opened a concrete division probably 3 to 4 years ago. I've got a really good crew there. Doing a lot of like patios, pole barn floors, house foundations, sidewalks, all that stuff. Not so much the decorative stuff, like no Stampcrete stuff. There's a specific type of person that needs to do that, and that's not really what I want to get into. Yeah. Other than that, it's just trucking, paving, milling, concrete, and that's pretty much it.
So was that like up until the point that you kind of took over, was it more just paving seasonal stuff, and then you kind of brought in the trucking aspect, the salts, all that stuff that made it kind of year-round operation?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I kind of took over, it was just, we pretty much solely only did paving, like a little bit of excavation work. That's one thing that I kind of expanded into too. Not a ton of it though, mostly just paving, like I said. And we did a little bit of trucking. We didn't have that many trucks, like I said, we didn't have that many guys, and we just did what we had to do, and we made decent money, and that's just what we did. And we plowed snow a little bit here and there in the wintertime, but not a lot. And then, when I took over, like I said, everything kind of just like, it didn't just like fall in my lap, but it kind of just like started to like snowball effect, like I didn't have plans of having this many trucks and this many guys, and we didn't do concrete, but then, part of paving is concrete, you know what I mean? Like we go do a Walmart parking lot or a Lowe's, and they need new sidewalks or, new lumber yards done. And I just saw the opportunity to make more money on the same project that I was already doing. And rather than subcontracting it out, I just decided to start my own crew. Yeah. And that's kind of how that trickled into effect. And then, I bought a couple more trucks, and then people started realizing that we had more trucks. So then the truck thing kind of took off. And then, I bought tractor trailers, and then, the people that I bought the tractor trailers from, they decided that they wanted to use us to haul salt in the winter. So that's how that kind of started. And then, everything kind of just like was like falling in place at this point. And now, I'm a big believer in sticking to what you know. You know what I mean? I only know blacktop, concrete, trucking, excavation. That's pretty much it.
That's your wheelhouse.
That's my wheelhouse. You're not going to see me out here, taking money and trying to get into real estate or insurance. You know what I mean? Like things like that.
Don't do it.
Like I know what I'm good at. I can pretty much do this stuff in my sleep, but and I give kudos to the guys that think, like say you do well in insurance, and I see that. Well, I'm not going to be the guy that's like, well, Turnbull's doing good in insurance, I might as well open an insurance firm. Yeah. That's not me. Yeah. Like I'm good at what I'm good at, and that's what I'm going to stick to, and I'm going to try to do it as efficiently as possible and make the most amount of money as I can, and that's just how I roll. So
that's how you become great at what you're doing. We just had a last guest on that we were talking about chasing 2 rabbits through the woods. You can't do it.
No.
Like you're saying, this is what we're good at. We have the equipment, we have the team, we have the knowledge, we have the proven track record. This is what we're going to focus on.
Yeah.
want to correct you on something though, and push back a little bit of you saying, well, it kind of just fell into place with all of these things. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of that's coming from the opportunity that you talked about how you focus on the reputation, about doing the right work. And I would imagine a lot of that came from, hey, Nick, you guys did this. Could you do this? Yeah. And that's where those opportunities were like, oh, yeah, we could.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly how it all happens, right? You know, you do work for somebody and they like how how efficient you were and how you responded and how well the job was done. And then the next thing you know, hey, I got 3 more properties that I want you to pave. Okay, perfect. And then you go do those 3 properties. And then his friend is like, well, I saw what you did for so-and-so.
Yeah.
I've got 3 properties. And then, it's just a giant snowball effect is how it goes. And I take a lot of pride in the work that we do. Is every job perfect? Absolutely not. We're all humans, right? And my guys are human, and you can't expect them to do perfect work every single day. But I'm also on the job site every single day. And if there's something that I don't like, I make them fix it. It's like, sometimes employees get in this like mode where it's like, well, it's not my business. What do I care? Well, when I'm on the job, well, it's my name on the door. It's my reputation. You're going to do it the way that I think it should be done. And I'm not going to sit here and knock my employees because I have a super, super good crew, like on all aspects, trucking, excavation, concrete, the whole 9. They're all great, and I've got it's kind of weird because like you look at the crew that I have really young kids, and I've kind of brought them on, and I'm trying to groom them to be how I want them to be, right? And then I have like a super age gap where there's not many 30, 40-year-olds in there. And then I have like 50s and 60-year-olds that have been doing it their whole life. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's kind of funny to see because it's like, you got 20 to 25-year-olds in there, and they're starting to like learn and take more responsibility, which is great because I want to keep them around, right? Because that's what you try to do. You don't hire a bunch of 60-year-olds and think that your business is going to last for 20 years, Has that challenged you to become a different leader when you have those 2 different type of team members that you're trying to lead and navigate? Absolutely. I have a lot of I get a lot of respect from the older generation just because most of them have been around the business for a while. So they kind of watched me, be this little snot-nosed kid to what I am now. So they have respect for me, which is nice, and I'll always have respect for them because at 60 years old to be out doing blacktop and concrete and driving truck and stuff, not an easy task. So you take that into consideration, and then you take these younger kids, and the younger kids always get a bad rep, right? It's like, oh, they don't want to work. They don't want to work. You just got to find the right ones. Like I have a really good group of kids that are, I call them kids, right? But they're between 20 and 27 years old that when they started, they weren't that great. But, if you treat them with respect and you show them what you want done, and then hopefully, there's always a couple bad eggs, but you weed them out. But you keep the good ones around, show them, how you like to do things. They pick up on it. They ask questions, you know what I mean? And then a little raise here, a little raise there, I treat everybody that works for me like family. You know what I mean? Your car breaks down, take a company truck home. I don't care. You know what I mean? As long as you show up to work tomorrow, it is what it is. Yeah. And I think a lot of those people like appreciate that. So it changed me from being like, and I'm not the type of boss that like, if something goes bad, I'm not going to scream and holler at you. I might talk to you in like a stern voice, or sometimes I don't even really say anything. I kind of just, they tell me, hey, I smashed the skid steer window, and you just look at them and you go, nice. And you just walk, you just like walk away.
I was trying that. Nice.
It's like you just walk away, and it's like when your father's like, he didn't yell at you, he's like disappointed, right? And then they get that feeling, and then they're like, maybe next time I'll like pay a little bit more attention. And that's all you have to say to them. You know what I mean? It's not, that is the one thing that like my father and like their generation, they screamed and hollered and, and fired people left and right because there was people knocking on the door for a job the next day. Right. It's not like that anymore. Yeah. There aren't people knocking on your door. You get rid of one guy, it might be a month before you can replace him. So it's like, try to keep the ones that you got that you want to keep around, you know, like, you know, I'm not going to say I fire people all the time, but I've had to let people go because they're, you know, not showing up to work or showing up late all the time and stuff. But you learn that as you go. Like, I wasn't a good leader the first year. I mean, I wouldn't say I wasn't a good leader. I would say I wasn't a good boss because I wasn't good at the uncomfortable conversations you have to have when something goes bad. And now over the last 5 or 6 years, I've had enough uncomfortable conversations that they're just conversations. They're just conversations at this point. You know, a guy might come in and want to talk to you about a raise and they're trembling, you know, but I'm sitting behind my desk, cool as a cucumber. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can ask me for a raise and, you know, depending if I think you deserve it or not, I'll give it to you. But it's 5 years ago, I would have been like, you know, I would have panicked and been like, yeah, no problem. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you know, but like now it's like you just have to talk to them and just be like, listen, you know, I know you'd like a raise, but you know, you've done this. But
you just smashed the skid steer window.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like it's just, those are things that you have to learn because you never taught those things. Like you learn them as you go. Yeah.
And I think one thing that you said I think is cool is like the 60-year-olds that you have working for you, like have seen you and come up through the business. I've had my experiences, family business, as people that know me have known that. And I think you have two categories, like the classic son of the boss.
Yeah.
That's the son of the boss that works his way up to the C-suite and whatever. And then your situation, doing the PGA courses at 11 years old, waking up in the middle of summer as a kid and working your way up. What do you think your situation with that of working your way up, working as a kid, being around the business has taught you when it comes to leading the team?
Well, I've seen everything, right? So, you know, literally probably until 6 or 7 years ago, I was just another guy. You know what I mean? Like, and everybody, you know, yeah, I was the boss's son, but I was raking blacktop. I was wheelbarrowing. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't get put in like a certain position just because I was my father's kid. You know, like I got sent out, and there's a lot of guys that were, that I watched throughout the years that I learned from, but I didn't just get like put into like an excavator, you know, because I was the boss's kid. No, I was in the ditch raking and shoveling, you know, and that's how it should be, right? And I think that's what made me a better leader was I didn't just get handed like the leadership position. I went through the ranks and I saw what it's like to be the laborer, and then I saw what it's like to be the operator, and then I saw what it's like to be the guy that's kind of managing a crew, and then, you know, eventually led into being like the owner and the boss, right? So I can understand when we're doing something and there's a bunch of wheelbarrowing and raking that's going on, how that laborer feels. You know what I mean? Like,
you've been in their shoes.
I've been in their shoes. You know, it's like, okay, it's hot out. I get it. Take a quick break. You know what I mean? Or, you know, I always try to make sure that there's more than enough help so that it's not like I'm sending 2 guys to do a 5-guy, you know, a 5-man job. You know what I mean? So it's like, I understand that. And I think that's what made me a better leader, was just like working through the ranks, seeing how everybody else feels. And like, now I'm the boss, and it's like, okay, like I know how he feels over there, or I know how this guy feels. And, you know, at the end of the day, a job's a job, right? But like, I don't want anybody to like hate working for me. You know what I mean? Like, if you hate working for me, it's most likely because you don't like somebody that you're working alongside of, or, you know, you might think that you're worth more money. But, you know, I just went through a situation where a guy decided he was going to leave, and I wish he would have just come to me, expressed his feelings as far as like, I don't like this, I don't like that, or like, even if it was a money situation, hey, like, you know, I'd like to get paid a little bit more. I would have appreciated that conversation versus just the, hey, I'm going to get done. Because I like to know what I can do to make maybe it wasn't going to work out with that guy, you know, and maybe it just wasn't going to happen no matter what I did for him. But I want to know where I can be better as an owner. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody's bothering you and you don't say anything to me, I'm not going to know because I'm not always there, right? You know what I mean? I'm not there when they're making comments to you or, you know what I mean? Things are getting heated. Well, just tell me. You know what I mean? Like, that's all I need to know, you know?
I got $1 million question to ask you. When you think of people in your fields of contractors, we'll just put it in that bucket. Everybody always says, no one answers the phone. No one gets back to me. He called me, but then I never heard back.
Yeah.
Talk to us about it. General comment, just want you to rip apart.
So it's a common thing with any contractor, whether it's home building, paving, excavating concrete, any trade work, right? Most companies are ran, so the owner is working in the company, right? So if that guy doesn't call you back, it's probably because he's busy nailing up a board, and you know what I mean? And you might have called him at 10 o'clock in the morning and he's in the middle of
Framing a house.
Yeah, framing a house, and then he forgot, you know what I mean? Because the day got by and, you know, he's got to go home to his family, and then the next thing you know, he's like, I forgot to call that guy back. And people are really, really quick to jump down contractors' throats about that stuff. And I get it, right? You know, like when I want something done, I want it done now. You know what I mean? So that was another thing that my dad really, really instilled in me as a child, was when someone calls, you immediately call them back. And I've done a very good job at that, I think. But then it got to the point where business was getting so busy that I couldn't be working in the business and running the business. So then you have to stop and talk to yourself and say, hey, I either have to delegate this job to somebody else, or I have to delegate another job so that I can answer the phone more often and I can go look at jobs and I can get them quotes quickly. But a lot of guys, they're just like, well, you know, I don't have time because, you know, I'm in the middle of a project. Well, people don't like to hear that, you know, and it just, it's tough. You know what I mean? Like I've been there. I've been there where I'm running the paver and my phone's ringing and so-and-so wants a quote on their driveway. And you're like, yeah, like I'll get a hold of you tonight and I'll come take a look at it. Well, then, you know, this breaks, that breaks, you know, it's 7 o'clock at night. You're just getting back to the shop and you forget. Or, you know, then you call them and they're like, well, you know, or you call them a few days later, right? And they're like, well, I already hired somebody else.
Right.
Because they answered the phone and came that day. Well, it's like, okay, you lick your wounds and you go about the day.
Yeah.
But it is hard to be a small business owner working in the business wearing all those hats. And that is one thing that I have learned a lot recently is I can't wear all the hats anymore because we've just gotten to a point where it's just not possible. I can't be the guy answering the phone. I can't be the guy that's going out and bidding all the work. I can't be the guy that's managing the work. I can't be on the job site 24/7. You know, so I've started to, you know, you have to hire quality people. They usually get paid decent. And, you know, you just have to bite the bullet and hire those people. You know, I just recently hired an estimator last year because I was getting overwhelmed with bidding jobs all the time.
So is that something you were doing everything?
Yeah. You know, up until last year, I was doing everything. You know, I hired an estimator. We never had a mechanic until last year. So it was like anytime anything broke, it was like, where do I take it and how do I get it fixed? Well, now I have a mechanic. You know, and now we're getting into a lot more trucking and everybody's calling me and it's hard. So now I'm looking to hire, well, I have a kid that works for me now that I want to, you know, groom into being like what they call a dispatcher, a guy that, you know, they call him, they ask for 4 trucks tomorrow at this location at this time and he lines it up. You know what I mean? You got to get to a point where you delegate some of this work. And that's one thing that I've learned not only from dealing with it, but watching, you know, listening to podcasts and watching videos and things like that is people that take that next step and better their business and, you know, expand their business, they had to hire people, you know, you have to delegate certain jobs. You know what I mean? You can't be a huge company and wear all the hats. It's just not possible.
Yeah. Talk to me about High Voltage Hills.
So High Voltage Hills is my motocross track that I built in 2016 was my first year operating. We have had a camp in Branningham since 2006, I believe. We own like 86 acres up there with my dad's. It's his second home. It might as well be his home. It's beautiful. And there was a piece of property across the road, came up for sale. We got it for a reasonable price. And I raced dirt bikes my whole life from the age of like 11 till just maybe 5-6 years ago. I kind of got out of it. And so we bought the property. I built a small private track for me and my friends. And then the circuit that I was racing, they came in and they were like, hey, this is a beautiful spot. Would you be interested in holding events? And my dad, being the person that he is, he's kind of like one of those guys that like he gets something in his mind. He's 150% in. I hemmed and hawed about it. And then he's like, let's just do it. So it took a full year of permitting, going through the town. It was like on the news, like the town meeting, because it was like an uproar at the town. I ended up being on the news after it got approved and everything. It was wild. And, we spent, thousands and thousands of dollars on engineering and doing all this stuff. And then finally, we had actually started building the track before we got approved. And we're just like, well, we're either going to have like a really cool dirt bike track or we're going to have a place we can hold events. And got it approved. And it kind of just took off from there. Been 10 years now. We went from 4 or 5 races a year, mediocre, attendance really. And then, it's one of those things like we try not to be average at anything. Right. And, we just kept doing bigger and better things to the track. And this is since the year that I've been open, I've won the track of the year for the district that I'm in.
Man, that's cool.
All 10 years. And super cool to have that. And then it stemmed into I acquired the New York State Championship race. So there's people that come from all over the country to race that. I mean, I had people from like Minnesota last year, Florida, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Maine,
Wow.
Canada. And then I had a kid from, actually he was over here on like a visa to race dirt bikes. And he was I believe he was from New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken. And he was there, and then.
Well, it's got to help the little town and community, right? What's the board think of it now?
Well, the board is, I'm not going to knock them, right?
No. I'm just saying it's got to look with all those people coming in. They got to stay somewhere. They got to eat somewhere. They got to.
So all the local businesses love it.
Yeah.
All the local businesses are super thankful for it. It's a very, very small community. There's 3 bars. They're all within 50 feet of each other, basically, in this little town. They knock it dead when the races are up there. There's a campground up there now. They do really well when the races are in there. And then like all the little gas stations and stuff, they all do really well when the races come in, because an average weekend, you're pulling in 500 riders, plus you got to think that they're bringing in 2 or 3 people with them,
right,
plus all the spectators in the area. You know what I mean? Like it draws a really good crowd. And then you throw the New York State Championship on it. We're just shy of 1,000 riders right now.
Wow.
The last 2 years. It's live television. So there's a company called Racer TV, AG Video. Adam, he works for Racer TV. He approached me, was like, I think it'd be really cool. You'd be the first amateur motocross event to be televised. And I was like, yeah, let's go for it. So we went for it. And the first year, it was a huge hit. And then we did it a second year, and it was even bigger. You know what I mean? And this year, we're going to do it again. And it, I think he said last year at one point, there was he had 30,000 views over the 2 days.
Wow.
People watching live stream.
Crazy.
That's pretty cool for a small
it is.
little track up in Branningham, New York. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's cool to see that, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I only have a few races a year now, just because it is smack dab in the middle of my busy season with paving and everything. So and it takes a lot. A lot of people don't see what goes in behind the scenes. And thankfully, my sister's kind of stepped up and helped me, you know, you got to think, man, on a motocross track, you got to have 20 plus flaggers, you know what I mean? And then you got to have an announcer, and you have to have people scoring, and you have to have an ambulance service, and, you know, porta potties and all this stuff that like goes
the
in.
Planning must be insane. Yeah.
is, you know, trophies galore, you know what I mean? And prizes and all this stuff that goes into it. And like super thankful that like my family and my fiance's family, they're always willing to help. Like whether it's like at the registration gate when people come in collecting, you know, general admission money, or, you know, my fiance, she helps with the scoring. And then one of my employees, like basically my brother, his wife does the scoring with her, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like family, but like at the same time, like if I didn't have them, I'd have to hire all that stuff out.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, you know, one weekend a month type thing. That's like, it's mind blowing, you know what I mean? And couple that with the paving and stuff. And it's like, by the time the summer's over, I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah.
How did I make it another year?
Right.
You know, it's like, but there's no better feeling than at the end of the weekend, a young kid coming up to you and telling you, this is my favorite track. Thank you for, you know, staying open, because these tracks are falling off left and right. They're just disappearing because there's not a lot of money in it. There really isn't. Like, I'm very fortunate that I already have the equipment that I can make money during the week to be able, you know, the dozers and the excavators and the skid steers and all this stuff. I have all that stuff. I'm making money with that during the week, so it's not a cost to me on the weekend.
Right.
You know, and there's just, you know, trophies and ambulance, you know.
Well, how about the kids? How about the kids signing up? I mean, it's not like you just buy a pair of soccer cleats and your kid's in soccer, right? I mean, it's expensive sport in itself just to participate in, not let alone put on the event.
Yeah. This is a little shot at hockey, but my one friend, his kids are in travel hockey, and I honestly think travel hockey is like 10 times more than it is to race dirt bikes. But at the same time, it's not a sport that you get into, like you said, you buy a pair of soccer cleats. There's no place to practice really anymore.
Right.
So it's like you're buying your kid a $5,000 to $10,000 dirt bike. You know, you're talking another $2,000 probably in gear to be able to, you know, have the proper gear to race. And then, you know, the entry fees every weekend, the travel cost, you know, all these people.
And then they go up a class next year, new dirt bike.
Exactly. It's the same thing. You know, it's like baseball. You know what I mean? Like, you know, one year you're using this mitt and this bat, and the next year you're using a different mitt and a different bat, but on a 10 times scale. You know what I mean? Like, luckily you can sell a dirt bike and, you know, use that money towards a new one, but nothing is cheap anymore. Right. You know, and tires and chains and maintenance and all this stuff, man. Like, it's unbelievable what these, and when I look at some of these people when they come through the gate, I just look at them and I'm like, man, like I do really well for myself, and I don't know how these people afford to have 4 kids racing. You know what I mean? And it's what they love. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I guess when it's something that your kid wants to do and you're all in, you just figure it out, man. It is what it is.
Last question, because we got to wrap this thing up. Mike will start kicking me. What's next for Nick? What's the next 5-10 years look like for the business?
Business wise, well, I'm getting married this year, so this
year,
congratulations.
So, this year, it's good you brought that up. If you forgot that, you would have been in trouble.
So I'm getting married this year. So this year looks a little bit different than most years because, you know, I want to stay. We do a lot of out of town work, so I want to stay closer to home this year and do all the fun things that you do when you get married. But in the next 5 to 10 years, you know, I'm all over the board, man. There's some days where I'm like, I want to expand. I want to 5 times the company even more. And then there's other days where I'm kind of complacent where I'm at, you know. And then there's other days where I'm like, I want to pack up and move to Tennessee and start a company down there. So, but in like all seriousness, I would say just continue to expand the company. I think I went a little aggressive the last 5 or 6 years as far as like expanding. And now it's more or less like keeping the equipment upgraded, keeping the trucks upgraded, keeping roughly the same amount of guys. You might have to bring on a few more here and there. And then like I told you earlier, delegating more jobs to people. That's my goal. You know, I want to be more or less an owner rather than a worker. You know, I want to be able to say, hey, Turnbull, you want to go play 9 at 3 o'clock, and be
Yep.
able to just walk away and go do that.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Very
that's
cool.
my goal.
Well, thanks for being here. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
How can
thank
people
you.
get in touch with you guys?
You can reach out to the office, 315-306-4057, and give them a call. And, Jolie in the office, she'll send you to the right place. And, you can look us up on the internet, the websites. I have websites for everything. Zielinski's Asphalt. I have cabins, High Voltage Hideaway. You can look them up, and then High Voltage MX.
Very cool.
So,
All right. Well, thanks again for the time. Everybody, that's another episode of the Make an Impact podcast. Until next time, go out there, lead with purpose, and make an impact in someone's life today, even if that's your own. My name's Stephen Turnbull. We'll see you next week. Take care.